This is Tanya Tassoni, and this is about my wonderful life, traveling the world on TWA. So come fly with me. Hi. So when I was 21, I was working at Emerson Electric over in West Florissant, which was a great company. I was just a clerk. But and I think even to this day, they pay every week. And I found out from Warren Miller, who was my boss, that they have a satellite office in Olgiatico, Italy, which is in Como, north of Milan. And I wrote to them and said that I wanted to come over and live in Italy and work there. And Inez Calcatira, who was a clerk in the office there, sent me a letter back saying, well, in those days, and I think even to this day, you have to have a work visa, and that's kind of difficult to get. But her sister had just passed away, who was married to Signora Bianchi, who lived in Milan. They had a daughter, Roberta, who was 12 years old, and they needed a governess. And would I be interested in that? Because you don't need a work permit for that. She did say, however, that you had to speak fluent Italian. I did not. And it would be helpful if I knew French. So I wrote back saying, yes, I spoke fluent Italian. And actually, I thought I did. But I knew no French. However, I did say that I knew French. And she wrote me back and said that she had talked to her brother-in-law, and yes, I could come. But it was still a question mark for some reason, but that didn't stop me. I found out that I could book a one-way ticket on the SS Waterman, which turned out to be not much bigger. Here's a picture of it. And this was in September of 1963. Not much bigger than the Admiral, if you're from the St. Louis area. And it was a Dutch ship, and it was going over in September. And all of the kids that were going to be on this ship are Europeans that were over here. So the weekend I was going to leave, I had booked a one-way ticket on the Greyhound bus and went to a party on Friday night and was supposed to leave Sunday morning. And at this party, I know this is a crazy story, but it's true. I met this guy, Lou, I don't remember his last name. We started talking, and I said, I don't know how it came up, but I said, yeah, I'm moving to Italy, and I'm leaving this weekend. He said, how are you getting over there? I said, well, I'm taking a ship. He said, well, I'm going to go to Sweden, and I'm leaving Monday. Now, I know this sounds crazy, but I said, well, I'm going on the SS Waterman. And he went crazy. He said, I am too. So how are you going to get to New York? He said, well, I was going to hitchhike. I said, oh, please, buy a ticket on the Greyhound bus. Come with me, and we can just stay in a hostel or stay up all night and then take the ship. So he agreed to that. He's a good-looking guy, too. I don't have a picture of him. I should. So we leave Sunday morning. We get on the bus. We arrive in New York, spent the whole night walking around with my suitcase and my bongos, and he just had a backpack. And then we went down, took a taxi down to the wharf, and here are these big ships, beautiful ships. We're so excited. And in between these two huge ships is the little SS Waterman. Once we got on board, this is really cool. We were already in Europe because all of these European kids from all over had been in the States all summer, vacationing, and they were going back home. So we had to exchange our money into guilders, which got us thing. They gave lessons on the ship, and it took 10 days. 10 days. It was wonderful. The seas were calm. It was a beautiful. So I took a French class, but let me back up. When I first arrived, because I had been up all night, I was exhausted, I went down 4 flights to get down into my cabin, and there were 4 bunks, 2 people to a bunk. And as I walked in, there was a huge bouquet of red roses, but I didn't pay any attention to that because I was tired. I picked my bottom bunk, fell asleep, and the next morning when I met my roommates, they were saying, well, you've probably done this before. I said, no, it was my first trip. They said, but you missed the Statue of Liberty. I'm going, oh my goodness, I didn't think about that. And they said, well, what's your name? I said, Tanya Tassoni. And they said, well, these are for you. Colleen, my best pal from high school, who married Phil Hippelman and lived in Newark, New Jersey, knew that I had written to him and let them know that, knew that I was going over and had sent those flowers to me. When we arrived on that ship, I thought that I knew geography. Obviously, I didn't. So I take my bongos, and we had such a good time on that ship. It was so much fun. I grab all my stuff. I'm going to take a train down to France first, because I still hadn't totally gotten the job. And I was supposed to write them whenever I landed in Europe to let them know. My high school teacher from my first podcast, Mrs. Marie Cleary, she and her husband, who was in the civil service for the U.S., were living in Orléans, France, which is south of Paris. And I had found out about her, and I had written her ahead of time and let her know that I was going to come over. So I was going to see her first. And this was a very wonderful thing that I did that. Fortunate for me. So I get to France. Well, let me back up. So I'm going to get on a local bus. I had taken a train down south. I'm still thinking I'm in France. I'm not. Got off the train, found the streetcar, and I'm going to go stay in a hostel. And I get on the streetcar with all my stuff, and I've got Dutch guilders, because I'm still in Holland, right? No. I'm in Brussels, Belgium. And the conductor is talking this Flemish language that doesn't sound like Dutch at all, and points to the cigar store, makes me get off the tram and go in the cigar store, and I've got Dutch guilders, and the guy takes them and gives me Belgian money. And then I stayed in a hostel close to there when I got into France, before I got to Marie Cleary's. So I get to Marie Cleary's. We're having a wonderful time. I wrote Inez back, and she then sent me a letter saying, yes, I'm going to be a governess. I leave France, get on a train, and I go to Milan. And let me also back up. I had converted to Catholic. I was Christian Catholic, but I never followed the faith. But I did take my lessons, and I did convert into Catholicism because I could roam the world with my Catholic missal and understand the Mass in Latin. So I was able to go to Catholic churches all over on my trip. I do get this letter from Inez, and I then go into Italy. I meet them. Now, they have a Portuguese maid. I can't remember her name, but she hated me instantly. Roberta was very nice. Luigi Bianchi, Vittori, he was great. They had Mercedes-Benz, and every weekend we would go 200 miles an hour on the Autobahn up to Como, and then up to Olgicamasco. And they would stay in the main house, and I would go over and stay with Inez. And in the room where I stayed, they had a huge window, and you could look out, because this was going into October, and it started to snow, and you could see the Swiss Alps. They found out that my Italian wasn't all that good, didn't know French, so it didn't really work out too well. However, when you learn a language, I had a friend of mine that I knew from St. Louis who was German and came to the United States and learned English. And she said, when you learn a foreign language and you start dreaming in that language, then you know you've got it. And before I left Italy, I was dreaming in Italian. But that didn't work out. Now, I didn't have enough money So I wrote to my sister and said, could you collect some money from my friends? And I'll let you know where to send it. And I'll try to get a job over here so I can come back home. I was very fortunate to be with the Clearys, but they were having problems, marital problems. And I decided that I needed a job. Now, in Orleans, there is an army base. I decided that I need to go on that army base. I bet they had a bulletin board, and I could get some kind of a job. But I didn't want to let Marie know that. So she had gone to the store or something, and I left a note that I had gone into the commissary at the, I don't know the name of that base. But to get there, because it's 3 miles in, I'm not going to walk, I hitchhiked. And this Frenchman with a Citroen picks me up, drops me off at the base. Can't do this nowadays, my gosh. Drops me off at the base. I go into the base, ask where the commissary is, go over to the commissary, and at the very top, there's a note that says, Captain Morrow Ivy, wife in the hospital, 2 children, need a live-in. That's me. I get his barracks number, ask directions, walk over, knock on his door. This handsome man in his full uniform opens the door, and in a matter of 5 minutes, I knew I needed him. He knew he needed me. Got in his Mercedes-Benz, drove back out to Marie Cleary's, and explained to her. And she was very, she's like my second mom by that time. Reluctant to do that, but she agreed. I get back there. I'm taking care of the kids. Now, Jim is about 9, and Cindy's 5. And she's very girly. I had to iron crinkly, wonderful little dresses every day. I didn't know how to cook. When you're a captain, you have to entertain. So I had to learn how to make martinis. Anyway, I was there 2 weeks before I met Betty Lou, who was still in the hospital. I can't remember what she had. She had some kind of surgery that took a long time. But it was wonderful. Fell in love with the kids, learned how to cook. She finally came home and laid on the couch and showed me exactly what to do, how to make a martini, what to cook. I became a good cook because we're... So I was there from October through December, through the first part of December. And in fact, that horrific day, which turned out to be nighttime, our time, the very first president I ever voted for was President Kennedy. And I am so grateful that I was with the Ivies when I found out. Because Morrow is a captain, he's in the Army, he knows that we're going to be safe. And when we found that out on the Air Force network, he had a calming effect. Because imagine being thousands of miles away from your family and not knowing what's going to happen to the United States. So that was incredible. Finally heard from my sister, and was going to get enough money. I booked a one-way ticket on the SS United States. 5 days instead of 10. And in the middle of winter. So, I took a train back to Le Havre, France, and boarded the SS United States. Not very many people on it. It's the middle of winter. What was interesting, though, and I can't remember this gal's name that was my roommate, we had the whole ship almost to ourselves. And the seas were really rough. They had all these Christmas trees bending back and forth on the tables. So I'm in the cabin, and my roommate comes in, and I notice that she's got a lot of food. I'm like, what are you doing here? Finally, by the second day, she explained to me that there's a stowaway on board. I'm like, what? And it turns out that he's the editor of a San Francisco newspaper. So we have this wonderful trip. We arrive at JFK, into New York rather, and we're on top of the top deck, and we look down, and I guess this guy, this editor, I think he got off in the laundry chute or something, because he was down at the bottom. He took our picture. I got to get a hold of that paper somehow, and made it, and made a headline story out of it. So that was pretty cool. But I had booked a one-way ticket on TWA, Trans World Airlines. It was $163, and I still got the stub. Took a taxi from the wharf all the way up JFK, got on my first TWA plane, and flew to St. Louis. And finally got back into St. Louis. And you know, people say you kiss the ground when you arrive. I did kiss the ground at JFK. And finally got home for Christmas, December 1963.